Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Ronnie Whitaker. I'm 42 years old. A decorated colonel in the United States Air Force, and recently, Major General Select. But to my father, I'm just the lowly soldier. The black sheep of the Whitaker dynasty. Our family is famous back in Atlanta. Whitaker and Sloan Holdings owns half the skyline, commercial towers, 5-star hotels, stadiums. If you've ever flown into Hartsfield Airport, odds are you've passed one of our billboards. My father, Thomas Whitaker, built it all. But don't be fooled, behind that polished southern drawl and those custom-tailored suits is a man who weaponizes pride like a blade. Growing up in that mansion on East Wesley Road was like being stuck in a spotlight, except it was never pointed at me. I was the middle child. My brother Clark, the crown prince, brilliant, cold, already shadowing dad's business deals by age 16. My younger sister Brielle, the media darling, whipped around the world to elite boarding schools, praised for her poise and grace. And me? Ronnie, the odd one. Quiet. Curious. Obsessed with planes. While my father taught Clark the language of leverage and power, I spent my weekends building model jets and reading about aviation strategy. I'd sneak into the garage, just to feel the cool metal of my mom's old car hood, lying there imagining what it would be like to fly. I'll never forget the day I told him I wanted to join the Air Force. He looked at me like I'd just said I wanted to join the circus. You think you're gonna waste that Whitaker blood flying government buses, he said. No one in this family puts on a uniform unless it's tailored and costs $5,000. Clark laughed. Brielle giggled behind her champagne flute. I was 17. My mother said nothing. She rarely did in front of him. I left a year later on a partial scholarship to the U.S. Air Force Academy. No one saw me off, not my father, not Clark, not Brielle. Only my mom stood on the porch in a silk robe, whispering, "Just, don't forget who you are, Ronnie." But the thing is, I didn't forget who I was. They did. For years, I served. I fought. I bled. I climbed the ranks, not with favors, not with the Whitaker name, but with grit. I earned my commission. I flew combat missions. I lost friends. I buried brothers. I trained cadets. I survived. And I never, not once, heard a word from my father. Until the invitation came. It was embossed in silver, sealed with a wax crest, Whitaker and Sloan Annual Charity Gala, celebrating legacy and leadership. I almost threw it out. But then I saw the guest list. U.S. Senators. CEOs. Governors. My name printed beside, Colonel Ronnie Whitaker, U.S. Air Force. I knew exactly what this was. An olive branch? No. A PR stunt? Maybe. But deep down, some foolish part of me hoped. Maybe this time, he'll say it. Maybe this time, he'll finally see me. I shouldn't have gone. Because that night? That was the night my father, standing under a $50,000 crystal chandelier, holding a flute of Dom Perignon, looked around a room full of dignitaries and said, "I'm proud of all my children, Clark, who's taken our company global. Brielle, who just closed a $1 billion partnership with Tokyo. All of them. Except that one, who ran off to become a lowly soldier." Laughter. Silence. And then every pair of eyes in that ballroom turned to me. They say silence is louder than noise. When my father finished that sentence, "lowly soldier," the ballroom didn't erupt. It collapsed. It folded into this thick, choking stillness. Dozens of perfectly dressed guests, senators, CEOs, and socialites, turned their heads ever so slightly, toward me. As if I was the one who should be embarrassed. I stood near the back, just off-center from the chandeliers, gripping the edge of my glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. I wasn't in uniform. I wore a dark suit. No medals. No ribbons. I wanted to be seen as a son, not a symbol. But it didn't matter. Because my father's words landed like a missile. And in a room full of people applauding legacy and service, no one, said a damn thing. Not Clark, who just kept sipping his drink. Not Brielle, who raised a single eyebrow and turned away. Not my mother, who froze, lips parted but too afraid to speak. I felt naked. Not physically, but emotionally, exposed, betrayed, gutted. I was a colonel. I'd flown over war zones. I'd briefed the Pentagon. I'd carried soldiers' last words back to their families. And yet, in that moment, I felt like I was 17 again, standing in my childhood kitchen, holding my Air Force acceptance letter while my father called me a waste of genes. I didn't even realize I was trembling until someone touched my elbow. It was Governor Ellis. A man who'd once told me in private that I was exactly the kind of officer this country needs. His voice was low. "Ronnie, are you all right?" I nodded. I wasn't. My face was burning. Not from anger, yet, but from shame. Humiliation. Regret. I shouldn't have come. I shouldn't have thought, even for a second, that anything would change. He'd sent the invitation not to include me, but to use me. To remind the world that I wasn't part of his success story. That despite my rank and record, I'd never be one of them. My entire life, I thought I was trying to earn his respect. But now I realized I was chasing something much darker. Permission to matter. I stepped away from the governor, muttering an excuse about the restroom. I just needed to breathe. Just one clean breath. I shoved open a side door and found myself alone in a hallway. Plush carpeting. Gilded frames on the wall. And at the far end, an exit. I stood there, half in the dark, fists clenched in my pockets. And for the first time in years, I felt like quitting. Not the Air Force. Not my career. I love what I do. It's who I am. No, I felt like quitting the fight. The fight to be seen. To be accepted. To be worthy of my own name. Because what's the point? If your father still sees you as a stain, even when the nation salutes you, what hope is there? Then I heard a door creak behind me. I turned. It was my mother. She looked small in that dress. Smaller than I remembered. And older. Her eyes brimmed with a sadness that mirrored mine. "Ronnie," she whispered. "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Don't defend him." "I'm not," she said quietly. "I just wanted to say. I'm proud of you." I wanted to believe her. I think she meant it. But it was too late. Because she'd been silent in that room. Just like she was silent all those years ago. She always chose peace over truth. Comfort over courage. "I have to go," I said. My voice cracked. "Wait, please." She reached into her purse. "He didn't know you were coming. The invitation was from the board, not him." I laughed bitterly. Of course it was. She looked down, ashamed. "He's not going to change." "I know," I said. "That's not what hurts." "What does, then?" That I did. And I walked away. I went back to my hotel room, sat on the edge of the bed, and pulled out the envelope I had meant to give him. Inside was my official promotion letter, Major General. Only a few people in the Air Force ever wear that star. It's a lifetime of work, sacrifice, and surviving what others couldn't. I had kept it folded neatly, intending to hand it to him as a peace offering. But now I stared at it like it was a relic of a dream I had outgrown. I spent the rest of that night in silence. No TV. No phone. Just the hum of the air conditioner and the ache in my chest. I felt like a man who had climbed Everest only to find his father waiting at the peak, laughing at the flag I planted. And that's when the despair turned into something else. Not rage. Not hatred. Something colder. Sharper. Resolve. If he wanted to paint me as a failure, fine. But I'd give him the full picture. When I woke the next morning, the sun was slicing through the hotel blinds like a spotlight. My head throbbed, not from alcohol, I hadn't touched a drop, but from the emotional hangover that comes from being gutted in public. I sat up in bed, that promotion letter still resting on the nightstand. I should have gone home. Gotten on the first flight back to DC, back to the people who actually respected me. But something kept me in Charleston. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. I wanted to understand how a father could stand in front of hundreds of people and humiliate his own son, a son who had never once asked him for money, opportunity, or a handout. So I called the one person who might still have insight, Mrs. Emma Price, my father's former executive assistant. She was retired now. Living quietly outside of Savannah. But back when I was a teenager sneaking into Dad's office to steal pens and notepads, Mrs. Price was the only adult who'd smile at me like I was more than a shadow. She picked up after 2 rings. "Ronnie Whitaker," she said, voice warm and suspicious. "I didn't expect this call." "I didn't expect to make it," I replied. She paused. "This about your daddy?" I nodded, forgetting for a second she couldn't see me. "Yeah. About last night. About everything." She sighed. "I saw the clip. Someone posted it on Twitter. It's going around." My stomach turned. "Great. You know what I saw," she said. "A man who's scared." I laughed. "My father? Scared of what?" "Scared you became something he couldn't control. Something he could never claim credit for." Her words hit me like a jolt of cold water. "Ronnie," she said slowly, "I never told anyone this, but, when you first got into the academy?" He was furious. Not disappointed, furious. "Said you'd embarrassed him. Said the son of a titan doesn't kneel to a uniform." My throat tightened. "He said that?" "He also made the board erase any mention of your military service from press releases." "I kept copies. I wasn't comfortable throwing history away." My heart stopped. "Copies? You kept proof?" "I did. Every time they issued a statement about the Whitaker children, your name was scrubbed. I even found a draft from your first deployment. He made the PR team cut out the paragraph about your commendation." My fists curled. He wasn't just embarrassed by me. He wanted to erase me. "Mrs. Price," I said, voice hoarse, could I see them?" "I thought you'd never ask." By the next day, she emailed me a zip file with nearly 30 internal memos, draft speeches, press clippings. All showing one thing. He deliberately erased me from the family legacy. Every article he published about the Whitakers, every anniversary gala, company bio, community award ceremony, he edited me out. Even when I was awarded the Silver Star after a combat mission in Syria, he told the PR team to focus on the siblings who carry the brand's legacy forward. There was even one email, cold, blunt, and damning. "We do not highlight Ronnie's military promotions. We're a real estate dynasty, not a recruiting commercial for the U.S. government." He chose to walk away. Let him. Let him. Let me vanish. Let me rot behind a uniform. And now, standing here at 42, a major general, I finally understood what I'd been chasing all these years. It wasn't his respect. It was acknowledgement. Existence. Proof that I mattered. But now I had something better than proof. I had evidence. Evidence that he not only disowned me in private but waged a quiet campaign to make sure I'd never be seen as a Whittaker in the public eye. He didn't just ignore me. He deleted me. That's when my despair died. And my plan began. After reading those emails and documents, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just anger anymore. It wasn't even grief. It was clarity. I wasn't just cut from the family tree, I had been professionally erased. As if my father had taken pruning shears to my name and memory. My rank, my sacrifice, my 20+ years of service, they were inconvenient truths that didn't fit his glossy narrative of the Whittaker Empire. And that meant one thing. He'd built a lie. And lies, especially the ones built for public display, can be dismantled. Piece by piece. Carefully. And very, very publicly. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to threaten. I wasn't going to embarrass him like he embarrassed me. I was going to do what I'd spent 2 decades perfecting in the military. Execute a strategy. First, I reached out to an old friend from the academy, Lieutenant Colonel Michelle Dean. She now ran comms and media relations for the Department of Defense. "Ronnie," she said after I sent her the background. "This could go viral." "I don't want viral," I said. "I want controlled fire." "You mean tactical?" "Exactly." She set up a meeting with the press office and looped in a contact from the South Carolina governor's office, someone who already respected me from prior briefings. I shared my promotion letter, the speech I would have given at the gala, and a few of the memos Mrs. Price had sent. I didn't need to defame my father. I just had to tell the truth. And show the receipts. Next, I wrote an op-ed. Not a takedown. Not a revenge piece. A quiet, powerful letter from a soldier's perspective about being erased by your own blood, and what it means to serve your country when your family believes you chose shame over legacy. I called it The Forgotten Son, What My Father Taught Me About Duty, by Abandoning Me. The editor at The Atlantic read it in one sitting and wrote back 2 words. "It's brilliant." He published it within 48 hours. Within a day of that, Michelle texted me, "Prepare for turbulence." The third piece? A leaked video. Not from me, but from someone at the gala. A guest had recorded the exact moment my father dismissed me on stage. "All of my children make me proud. Except the one who ran off to become a lowly soldier." The video cut to my reaction. Stoic. Unmoving. And then a close-up of the letter I left on the stage, my appointment to Major General. The video was raw, powerful, and spreading like wildfire. By day 3, #LowlySoldier was trending on X. Comments poured in from veterans, military families, even influencers. "Disowned by your dad, decorated by your country. Keep your head up, General Whittaker. Some dads build empires. Others build egos. Imagine choosing condos over character. He lost the better son." I wasn't basking in the attention. I was watching the foundation of the Whittaker brand begin to crack. Then came the final piece. The non-profit clause. You see, my father's beloved landmark foundation, the crown jewel of his charity image, relied heavily on corporate partnerships and military grants. Many of those funds were funneled through programs designed to support veterans and service families. So when a decorated Air Force officer goes viral for being humiliated by the founder of that very foundation, the backlash is swift. A memo leaked that morning, one I hadn't planned, but certainly welcomed. The Veterans Affairs Office announced a full audit of Landmark Foundation's funding. Within hours, 2 major sponsors, Blue Ridge Bank and Paramount Health, suspended donations, pending internal review. I heard through a contact that my father screamed for 3 straight hours in his office. He blamed the PR team, the board, even Clark. But they weren't the ones who stood under a spotlight and called their own son a failure. That was all him. All I had done was turn on the lights. The last step. Silence. I made no more posts. No interviews. No threats. Just watched as the very machine my father built to uphold his image now buckled under its own hypocrisy. A week later, Michelle called me. "He knows you did this." "Good," I said calmly. "Let him. What do you want to do now?" I looked at the folded promotion letter on my desk. And smiled. "I'm not done yet." There's a moment, right before takeoff in an F-16, where time feels suspended. The runway stretches ahead, the jet vibrates with power, and the air is heavy with anticipation. That's where I was emotionally. Except now, the runway was my father's empire. And I was just starting to push the throttle. The pressure on Landmark Holdings was building fast. Within a week of the leaked video and op-ed, the headlines turned brutal. Whitaker scandal, decorated general erased from his own legacy, CNN. Lowly soldier or national hero? The truth behind the family feud, The Atlantic. Landmark Foundation loses $17 million in sponsorships after Gala fallout, Forbes. Investors were pulling out. Donors were ghosting. Military contractors cut ties almost overnight. And inside Landmark's boardroom? Rebellion. A friend on the inside, someone Dad once trusted blindly, called me. "You set this in motion, didn't you?" I didn't lie. I told the truth. He laughed bitterly. "Truth feels like a scalpel right now." I stayed quiet. "They're calling an emergency vote," he continued. "There's talk of removing your father as chairman." I leaned back in my chair, heart steady. What does Clark think? He's panicking. Trying to act like the heir who can fix it all. Of course he is. Clark had always believed the world owed him loyalty simply because of his last name. But now the family brand was radioactive. My father's downfall wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about power. That weekend, I did something bold. I returned to Charleston. Not to confront my father. But to honor someone else. Mrs. Emma Price. I met her at a quiet bistro near the bay. She wore a green scarf and gold-rimmed glasses, her white hair pulled into a neat bun. When she saw me, she smiled with her eyes before her lips even moved. "You never needed to prove anything," she said. I nodded, sliding a small envelope across the table. "What's this?" "Your name," I said. "On the DoD Civilian Appreciation List." I told them how you preserved the truth. "You're going to receive a medal." She covered her mouth, blinking tears. "Ronnie. You didn't just save my past. You helped me protect my future." That same afternoon, I sent out one final message. A simple letter addressed to the Landmark Holdings board. Not bitter. Not vengeful. Just, surgical. To the esteemed board. I write not as a general, nor as the disowned son of Thomas Whitaker, but as a citizen who has watched this company claim values it has long abandoned. Landmark Holdings has branded itself as a pillar of community, a supporter of veterans, and a family-run business built on legacy. But what is legacy if it silences its own? Your founder weaponized shame against his own child for political optics. You stood by as he erased my name from family records, awards, and press releases, because my path didn't fit the narrative. The country I served didn't ask me to fit in. It asked me to rise. And I did. Can your company say the same? With respect. Major General Ronnie Whitaker. 3 days later, I received a response. Thomas Whitaker was removed as chairman. Clark was promoted. But it didn't matter. The legacy my father obsessed over was tarnished. Not because of me, but because of the lies he buried for decades. And now, those lies were flooding to the surface. I didn't celebrate. There were no victory drinks or press tours. Just a quiet afternoon in my DC apartment, cleaning my boots and thinking about my mom. She hadn't spoken publicly since the gala. But she'd texted me. "I'm proud of you. I wish I'd said it sooner." I replied. "You just did." And I heard it. Later that week, I received a letter from the Secretary of the Air Force. They were moving up my promotion ceremony. "Your story," the letter read, "has inspired an entire generation of officers to remember that honor is not inherited. It is earned." I thought the worst was over. My father had been removed as chairman. Landmark Holdings was bleeding influence. I had found my voice, cleared my name, and reclaimed my dignity on my own terms. But I had underestimated one thing: Thomas Whitaker's ability to twist the narrative. One morning, I woke to a headline that nearly knocked the wind out of me. "Former CEO Thomas Whitaker breaks silence, says son betrayed family for fame." Beneath the title was a smug photo of my father sitting in his study, hands folded over a leather-bound edition of his autobiography. He looked calm. Dignified. Presidential, even. I read the opening quote twice. My son chose to abandon the family business to chase headlines in uniform. Now, he's using a moment of misplaced emotion to tear down everything we built. Emotion? That wasn't emotion. It was truth. I felt the fury rise again. My fingers curled around my coffee mug so hard, I nearly cracked the ceramic. It got worse. He had gone on national television. Some talk show with a reputation for spinning scandals into redemption arcs. And there he sat, in a gray suit, playing the wounded father. "I never disowned Ronnie," he said with practiced sorrow. "But I was hurt by his choices. I wish he had spoken to me man to man, not through the media." I nearly choked. Spoken to him man to man. He humiliated me on a microphone in front of hundreds of people and called me a lowly soldier. Now he wanted sympathy. It worked on some. Public opinion split down the middle. Some felt sorry for him. Others doubled down on their support for me. But it didn't matter. What mattered was what came next. Because that interview, it triggered something I didn't expect. That same day, I got a call from Brielle. Yes, that Brielle, the sister who'd never lifted a finger to defend me. The one who stood silent at the gala. The one who once mocked my academy scholarship over brunch. "Ronnie," she said. "We need to talk. In person." I paused. "Why?" "Because you need to know the truth. And I can't say it over the phone." I met her in a private lounge in Midtown Atlanta. She wore black, no makeup, hair in a bun, not the polished image she always projected. "I'm not here to apologize," she began. "But I am here to come clean." I didn't respond. She sighed. "Clark and we knew. About the PR edits. About Dad deleting you from the company bios, the newsletters, even the charity profiles." I stared at her, jaw tight. "And you didn't stop him?" She shook her head, ashamed. "We were scared. Everything we have, our positions, our homes, even our security, is tied to him. We learned to survive by staying silent." I scoffed. "Congratulations. But that's not all," she said. "You think he just erased you from Landmark's history? Ronnie, he tried to sabotage your military career." I froze. "What?" "After you were deployed to Syria, he reached out to a defense contractor with ties to the Pentagon. Told them you were unstable. Said you had issues with authority. Tried to plant a seed to block your promotions." My stomach dropped. I didn't want to believe her. But deep down, it made sense. All the unexplained delays. The vague pushback. The time I was mysteriously passed over for a recommendation, only to be reconsidered after a senator intervened. "You're lying," I said, though weakly. "I'm not. I can prove it." She slid a folder across the table. Inside were emails, printed. Real ones. Dated. Names I recognized, people I'd once briefed in Washington. He had done it. He tried to kill my career from the inside. I sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I whispered, "Why are you telling me this now?" She looked at me with eyes I barely recognized. Because. I'm tired. Tired of the lies. Of being part of this machine. You're the only one who ever broke free. And maybe now, you're the only one who can stop him. That night, I went back to my hotel and opened my laptop. I read every email. Every threat. Every line my father sent to smear me behind my back. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. I stared at the emails for a long time. Each line was a betrayal dressed in formal language. My father hadn't just dismissed me. He had tried to end my entire career. Quietly. Strategically. From the shadows. Like a coward. But now I had everything. The public disgrace. The leaked video. The deleted records. And now, the attempted sabotage of a U.S. military officer's career. It wasn't just a family scandal anymore. It was a national one. I didn't leak the emails to the press. I didn't call a news conference. No. I did what I'd always done, followed the proper chain of command. I turned the folder over to the Inspector General's office at the Pentagon. They took one look and opened an official ethics investigation, not into me, but into the private contractors and civilian liaisons my father had tried to manipulate. He never saw it coming. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care how it made him look. I wasn't doing this to ruin him. I was doing it to clear the path for every soldier who came after me. To make sure that no one with power could ever try to erase someone like me again. Days later, I stood at my official Major General promotion ceremony. No gala. No chandeliers. Just a flag, a podium, and a row of soldiers who had stood with me in deserts, in storms, in grief, and in triumph. My mother was there. She cried quietly as the second star was pinned to my shoulder. When the general asked if I wanted to say a few words, I stepped forward and took a deep breath. I stand here not as a son of legacy, I said, voice steady. But as a son of duty. I wear this star not because someone made a path for me, but because I chose to walk one they never believed I could. I paused, feeling the weight of silence in the room. Some families hand down empires. Others hand down expectations. But the truest inheritance a person can have is conviction. And with that, I stepped down. Not to applause, but to respect. That afternoon, I received one final message from my father. No phone call. No email. Just a courier. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. Ronnie. You've made your point. But you've also made a mistake. Families don't survive like this. You chose the military over blood. And now, blood turns its back on you. Thomas Whitaker. I folded the paper once, slowly. Then tossed it into the fire pit behind my house and watched it burn. Because that letter wasn't power. It was fear. Fear from a man watching his illusion of control go up in smoke. And you know what? I'm finally free. Free from the need to impress him. Free from the chains of that name. Free from the craving to be seen by a man who never saw me clearly in the first place. I built something he never could. Honor that doesn't need a spotlight. Months later, the Pentagon completed its investigation. Several private contractors were sanctioned. One executive lost their security clearance. My father's name wasn't directly implicated. But the stain remained. Landmark Holdings never recovered. Their partnerships dried up. Media turned cold. And Clark? He stepped down, citing mental health reasons. Brielle sold her shares quietly and left for Europe. The Whittaker empire collapsed from within. And all I had to do was stop chasing their approval. Now, I live just outside Colorado Springs. Close to the Air Force Academy, where it all began. I teach strategy classes, mentor cadets, and fly occasionally when the sky calls me. Sometimes, a young cadet will stop me and ask, "General Whittaker, is it true what they say about your father?" I smile, and tell them the truth. Some people are born with legacies. Others are born to build their own. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.